When a sigma male withdraws emotion, the world doesn't notice it at first, but the people closest to him feel the shift like a sudden drop in temperature. His voice stays the same, his routines barely change, yet something inside him has gone quiet in a way that silence alone can't explain. It's the moment where his emotional investment collapses, not with anger or reaction, but with an internal clarity so sharp it severs attachments without making a sound. You can't fight it. You can't pull him back, because what just disappeared wasn't attention. It was access to his inner world. This emotional withdrawal isn't a reaction to conflict, it's a response to truth. Something he once tolerated no longer aligns with who he is. A pattern finally makes sense. A boundary he ignored reveals its cost. And the Sigma, who normally feels deeply and analyzes quietly, suddenly detaches with the precision of someone who has seen enough. He stops giving explanations. He stops carrying the weight of other people's expectations. He stops reacting because the connection that once moved him no longer does. His silence becomes a mirror that exposes the relationship, the dynamic, and the truth everyone tried to avoid. Before we dive into the psychological shifts that happen inside him, tell me in the comments with the word empty glass if you've ever felt this emotional shutdown in yourself or someone else. And if you want more content that reveals the hidden world of Sigma psychology, make sure you subscribe to UltraWise. Every video you miss is another insight that could have helped you understand your own evolution. He stops reacting emotionally. His silence becomes the first sign the connection is already fading. When a Sigma male withdraws emotionally, the shift is so subtle that most people don't recognize it until it's already irreversible. He doesn't announce it, he doesn't start a fight, and he doesn't beg for change. He simply stops reacting. The tone of his voice stays calm, but the warmth disappears. His responses become shorter, not out of anger, but because he has nothing left to give. And while others may mistake his quiet for patience, indifference, or even forgiveness, it's actually the quiet erosion of a connection he's already letting go of internally. A Sigma's silence is not passive, it's diagnostic. It tells him everything he needs to know. This withdrawal doesn't happen overnight. It begins with a moment, one small disappointment, one betrayal of trust, one repeated pattern he finally sees clearly. He doesn't explode, he implodes. And after that moment, something inside him shifts permanently. He starts listening more carefully, not to what someone says, but to what their actions reveal. He pays attention to tone, timing, inconsistencies. He becomes an observer instead of a participant. The emotional investment that once kept him anchored begins dissolving thread by thread until what remains is only clarity. While others may try to pull him back into old emotional loops, he no longer reacts because he no longer feels bound to the role he once played. The most haunting part is that his silence doesn't punish, it reveals. It exposes the effort imbalance, the emotional misalignment, the unspoken truth that he was carrying the connection far more than anyone realized. And by the time the silence becomes noticeable, he has already made peace with leaving. A Sigma doesn't withdraw to be dramatic. He withdraws because the emotional bridge has already collapsed inside him. And once it collapses, he never rebuilds it. He shifts into observation mode, studying the truth of the relationship without participating in it. When a Sigma male begins to detach, he doesn't argue, confront, or seek reassurance. He simply moves into a different internal state, one where he stops engaging emotionally and starts observing with absolute clarity. It's a quiet transformation, almost invisible from the outside. His eyes become sharper, his reactions slower, and his presence heavier. He's no longer inside the emotional dynamic, he's watching it from the outside, analyzing the patterns he once ignored because he cared too much to see them clearly. This shift is not coldness, it's data collection. He is studying motives, behaviors, inconsistencies, and truths that only surface when he removes his emotional involvement. In this mode, every interaction becomes a revelation. He notices the tone someone uses when they think he isn't paying attention. He notices how effort changes depending on convenience. He notices who reaches out, who withdraws, who takes, who gives, and who vanishes the moment he stops carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. He observes how people behave when they no longer have access to his reactions, his empathy, or his willingness to meet them halfway. And in those quiet moments of watching rather than participating, he becomes aware of realities that were always there. He simply wasn't detached enough to see them. The unsettling part for others is that a Sigma doesn't warn anyone when he enters this state. He doesn't explain the shift or announce what he's evaluating. His silence becomes the space where truth is revealed naturally. And while the other person may believe he is distant or distracted, he is actually making one of the most important decisions of his life: whether this connection still deserves space in his world. Once he has gathered enough truth, his next move is final, because a Sigma who has observed the truth without emotion never returns to how things were. He detaches internally long before he changes anything externally. A Sigma male never leaves suddenly. He leaves silently, and long before anyone realizes he's already gone. His internal detachment begins quietly, almost softly, like a thread loosening inside a knot. No arguments, no accusations, no dramatic shift in his behavior. Outside, he looks calm, steady, present. Inside, the emotional cords that once held him in place begin to dissolve. He stops imagining a future with the person. He stops feeling responsible for maintaining harmony. He stops investing pieces of himself into a connection that no longer feels aligned. This inner departure is the real ending. Everything that comes after it is merely the physical confirmation of a decision he made weeks or even months earlier. While others might cling to his steady presence, believing everything is fine because he still shows up physically, the Sigma knows the truth. Once his heart pulls back, the relationship has entered its final chapter. He doesn't need to talk about it because the emotional bridge is already closed. He moves through the connection like someone walking through a familiar room one last time, taking note of what once mattered but no longer has the same weight. He becomes quieter, but not cold, distant, but not cruel. His detachment isn't punishment, it's self-preservation. He's giving himself permission to step out from something that no longer feels honest to his inner world. The most haunting part is how natural his exit becomes once the internal break has happened. He doesn't force anything. He doesn't rush. He simply aligns his outer life with the inner truth he's been sitting with. And by the time he finally walks away, people often think he left too quickly. But a Sigma never leaves suddenly. He only leaves once he's already been gone emotionally for a long time. His physical absence is just the echo of a decision his spirit made long before. He withdraws his effort, energy, and emotional availability without announcing it. A Sigma male never makes a scene when he begins to pull back. There are no warnings, no emotional ultimatums, no final speeches asking someone to notice what they've been ignoring. He simply withdraws, quietly, steadily, intentionally. The messages that used to carry warmth now become neutral. The conversations he once initiated fade into short, polite replies. The emotional labor he used to provide, reassurance, understanding, presence, disappears without confrontation. He stops investing because he already knows the return is no longer worth the cost. And while the other person may assume he's just busy or tired, the truth is much deeper. He is reclaiming the parts of himself he once offered freely. This withdrawal isn't sudden, it's a shift in the current of his energy. His attention drifts away from the connection and toward the parts of his life that still feel meaningful. He no longer plans around someone else's needs, no longer stretches himself to keep the peace, no longer sacrifices his inner stability for external harmony. His silence becomes longer, his presence becomes lighter, and his emotional doors close one by one. He doesn't do this to manipulate or punish. He does it because he finally understands his value isn't being matched, and he refuses to keep bleeding effort into a space that no longer nourishes him. What makes this withdrawal so powerful and so devastating is that it is irreversible. By the time a Sigma reduces his effort, he has already made the emotional decision to detach. He is simply allowing the connection to fade naturally instead of tearing it apart. People often realize too late that the shift has happened because he leaves without noise. He leaves by absence, not argument. And in that quiet, the truth becomes undeniable. Once a Sigma withdraws his energy, the relationship is already over, even if the goodbye hasn't been spoken yet. He no longer feels responsible for maintaining the connection. When a Sigma male reaches this stage, the entire emotional dynamic of the relationship shifts without a single word spoken. For most of his life, he's been the one who holds things together, the steady presence, the one who listens, the one who understands, even when he receives nothing in return. But the moment he realizes that the connection depends entirely on his effort, something inside him shuts off. He stops carrying the weight of two people. He stops fixing what the other person keeps breaking. He stops being the emotional anchor for someone who never learned how to stand on their own. And the moment he releases that responsibility, the relationship begins revealing itself in ways it never has before. This isn't a cold decision, it's an awakening. He begins to see how much of the emotional maintenance he has been doing in silence. How often he was the one initiating clarity, smoothing tension, offering reassurance. How often he explained, soothed, adjusted, compromised, even when he shouldn't have needed to. And once he recognizes that imbalance, he refuses to continue playing the role. He stops double texting. He stops reminding. He stops accommodating. He stops apologizing for things that were never his fault. His emotional neutrality becomes the mirror that exposes how one-sided the connection truly was. What makes this shift so powerful is that it's not born from anger, it's born from realization. He no longer feels compelled to save what was never being built equally. He lets the connection breathe on its own, stand on its own, or collapse on its own. If the other person steps forward with real effort, the bond might resurrect. But if they don't, he won't chase, won't plead, won't negotiate. He simply allows the natural distance to become permanent. Because once a Sigma stops feeling responsible for maintaining the connection, it means he has finally remembered something essential. He is not required to carry relationships that cannot carry themselves. He mentally prepares for a clean exit, even if he remains physically present. When a Sigma male reaches this phase, the relationship enters a silent countdown that only he can hear. Outwardly, nothing seems different. He still shows up, still speaks when necessary, still moves through the shared spaces with the same composure as before. But internally, he has already begun detaching piece by piece. This is the moment when he starts gathering emotional distance the way someone gathers supplies before a long journey. He becomes quieter, more observant, more deliberate. He stops investing in the future of the connection and starts investing in the future of himself. To others, it looks like nothing has changed. In reality, everything has. As he prepares for a clean exit, he rewrites the narrative within himself. He stops trying to justify staying. He stops replaying old memories to convince himself the bond can still work. He stops negotiating with his instincts. He accepts the truth he has been avoiding. The connection no longer aligns with who he is becoming. And once he reaches that clarity, Leaving becomes an act of self-respect, not abandonment. He withdraws emotionally, so the final step, physical departure, feels natural, not dramatic. This internal exit plan is methodical, almost surgical. He reduces his emotional footprint, collecting the parts of himself he once shared freely. He stops offering vulnerability. He stops revealing his thoughts. He stops allowing access to the parts of him that once made the relationship meaningful. His silence becomes the transition point between presence and departure. By the time he actually walks away, the hardest part, the emotional leaving, has already happened. And that is why his exits are so clean. He leaves completely, because he already let go long before he physically stepped out the door. Once withdrawn, he becomes unreachable. The emotional bridge is gone, and nothing can rebuild it. When a Sigma male reaches this final stage, it is not anger, disappointment, or resentment that closes the distance, it is clarity. The moment he realizes the connection has taken more from him than it ever returned, the emotional bridge that once linked him to the other person doesn't just weaken, it collapses completely. This isn't a temporary retreat or a cry for attention. It is a quiet, irreversible shift where he steps back into himself and seals the door behind him. And the most haunting part is that he leaves without noise, without warnings, without dramatic exits. One day he simply isn't emotionally there anymore, and nothing you say, promise, or confess can pull him back. His unreachability isn't meant to punish. It is a form of self-preservation. He has already examined the relationship from every angle, weighed every memory, measured every loss, and accepted every truth he once avoided. By the time he withdraws fully, he has grieved the connection while still in it. He has processed what others only begin to feel after he is gone. And because of that, there is no emotional thread left to tug on. He has severed it cleanly, not out of coldness, but out of necessity. What makes this stage so final is that he doesn't look back. He doesn't reopen conversations. He doesn't entertain what-if scenarios. He doesn't revisit old emotions to see if something can be revived. The version of him who cared is gone, replaced by a version who learned from the experience and refuses to repeat it. Once he withdraws completely, the emotional bridge is not damaged, it is erased, and rebuilding something that no longer exists becomes impossible. When a Sigma male withdraws emotionally, the ending is quiet, but the message is absolute. There is no confrontation, no explosion, no dramatic goodbye. Only a steady disappearance that reveals how deeply he had already detached long before anyone noticed. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that silence, you know it's not meant to hurt you, it's meant to protect him. His absence becomes the final truth the connection could not survive. If this breakdown helped you understand the Sigma mindset on a deeper level, stay with the channel. There's more insight coming that will change how you see detachment, boundaries, and emotional power. Before you scroll, tell me in the comments, have you ever withdrawn long before you walked away? Your story might resonate with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more content that hits this level of depth, clarity, and self-mastery, subscribe to UltraWise, because the next video may be the one that explains a piece of yourself you've never been able to name.